Good Wednesday to you, everybody. Incom/Gov664. Welcome to week bang 3. Not quite at the halfway point, but we are coming up fast. Let's get this session started correctly with a little, probably later than I should, afternoon coffee. What do we have here today with the Vienna Cup, or as they say in Viennese or Austrian, really German, Wien. Okay, Cool Town, one of my favorites. I mean, outside of where I live, of course. Let's just raise this up a little bit. There we go. Now I can see what I'm doing. Okay, welcome to you all. I hope that you had a restful Memorial Day, and that you took time to remember those who have fallen in defense of our country, and to all members, active or veterans, hats off to you. Okay, let's take a look at what we're going to be doing this week, and then we'll go back and talk about what we did last week. Your first film review was due yesterday. I see that most of you have it in. If you didn't get it in and you haven't hit, the post that is the deadline, make sure that you rectify this scenario for upcoming assignments. In an 8-week course, there's really, it's just simply too rapid of a pace to fall behind, both for you and for me. I do not have as much bandwidth during these, what's wrong with my hat? During these short courses to make adjustments in terms of due dates and when I can accept assignments as I would during a 16 week. I'm obviously not sufficiently caffeinated. During a 16 week course, things just move too quickly. There's too much to be done. So the short of it is, don't miss the deadlines. You got to get those things in on time. Okay. So I have posted the link for your next film review number 2, which will be due on June 9th. And, per this 8-week cycle, that's like bam, bam. I mean, today's the 27th. A week from today is the 3rd, and then the 9th. So it's like a week and change for this next one. So, maybe you block out a little bit of time this weekend. You sit down and you watch. All right. If you have any questions about those, let me know. This week, I will be grading your first film review and weeks 1 and 2 of the discussion sections. So you'll get a sense of what I'm looking for. You get some feedback from me as we go ahead. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at what you did last week and see what we can add to it. So to the discussion sections, and remember, the final exam will be drawn from these discussion questions. All right. So you get the discussion questions right, you're going to do fine on the exam. Okay. Week 2 from PIP and MAP. Let's see what you did. Question number 1. According to the study done by Page et al., what type of news reporting moves public opinion the most? Lucas, let's start with you. You went last. Let's take you. The study by Page et al. Suggests that news commentary has the greatest impact on public opinion, possessing, you're right, my wrong. Higher influence than content shared by experts and even popular presidents. Yes, exactly. And this is part of our problem now in this triangulation between government, now maybe we put government on the side, we'll put people on the top, however you want to envision it. Government, media, and the people, this relationship that, the term fake news has come into use over the last few years. I can't say that we can pinpoint its introduction into the common lexicon during the first presidency of Donald Trump. And that would be what, 2016? Yeah, when we're at 20, was it 2016? We're at 2026. How the years fly. But probably somewhere in that neighborhood. Understand that that term, properly understood, does not mean at its core fake in the sense that something has been manufactured from whole cloth, that is just completely made up, or it's an AI deep fake or something, which those kinds of things certainly fall into the category of fake. But most of the time, the majority of what is being passed off as news, that is information, is actually opinion, commentary. Now, it was standard for years, and in some publications it still is, that there was a completely separate section within the publication for opinion and editorial, the op-ed page, in which somebody with some, set of qualifications, whatever those might be, opined about the meaning or the nature or the cause and effect or the things that you should watch out for or the things that you can anticipate, et cetera, about a given event or usually trend. That was held completely separate from the rest of the news, which was understood to mean a presentation of the facts that a certain event had, with much less in the way of commentary about what the point was. That began to change with the advent of 24/7 cable television, because broadcasters found that what really kept people glued was not a recitation of facts, but rather a persuasive opinion, an opinion presented by a charismatic figure. Whether that was someone who had star power that went into news. Rachel Maddow is an example of this. She's on, I think, NBC. She started out as a YouTube personality, made the jump to cable news. Or they developed star power as a result of their time. Bill O'Reilly would be an example of that. He had been banging around the news business for many, many years, and then developed a sort of a star status, a star reputation, doing a commentary show, and then was picked up by Fox and began a news show. And his popularity blew up. And then after he was fired from Fox News, he set up shop on the internet, and by most reports is making more money and has a larger audience on the internet than he did at Fox. But a lot of what he does is opinion editorial, and which is okay. I write opinion editorial with some regularity. But when you try to pass off opinion editorial as this is what the event signifies or means, then that becomes problematic. And especially if it's really not well considered opinion, that is, it's not weighed against facts. I teach statistical research, and one of the things that you have to be very careful of as a researcher, a statistician, is the difference between a correlation and causation. Correlation just means two things are happening at the same time, but they're not causing one another. Causation is this thing happens and then it causes this. Op-ed, opinion editorial, presented as news, blurs the line between correlation and causation, and often presents the story, the analysis, that the correlation is causation, that because two things are happening, that the one is causing the other. And it takes work, and it takes time, and it takes knowledge and discipline. It takes a breadth of knowledge to be able to tell the difference between correlation and causation and present an opinion. And that's not often done. And so that's why this is problematic. But yes, correct, Lucas. All right, question number 2. Oh, and by the way, when I'm going to give you the choice throughout the semester which are the questions you want to answer. And when you select them, keep the numbering the same. So if you select, I'm just going to pull numbers out of a hat here. If you select out of typically the 7 options, if you select like 1, 5, and 6, list them as 1, 5, and 6. Don't go 1, 2, and 3, because then people may or may not pick up that you're answering 1, 5, and 6. They think you're answering 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's take a look then at question number 2. Research done by Paul Gronk and Timothy Cook suggests that from the 1970s to the 1990s, an increasing number of Americans do not trust the press. Briefly summarize how they came to this conclusion and answer the following question. If Gronk and Cook's findings are correct, does this trend help or hurt U.S. democracy? Which is, by the way, the sort of the bottom line that we should always be aiming at, to say, okay, yeah, great. This phenomenon is happening in this triangulation of government, people, and media. Yeah, so what? Is that a net positive or a net negative for us as a society? Okay. Angelia, let's take a look at you. Paul Gronk and Timothy Cook concluded that America's trust in the press declined steadily from the 1970s, 1990s based on longitudinal public opinion data. Okay. Okay, I just lost my place. Including surveys from Gallup National Election Studies. This research found that fewer Americans believe the press reported fairly, accurately, or without political bias. And that third one was really significant. Public confidence in journalism increasingly mirrored broader institutional distrust shaped by Vietnam, Watergate, partisan politics, the growing commercialization of media. The news became more competitive and interpretive. Back to the op-ed stuff. Audiences began to perceive journalists as political actors rather than neutral observers. I could not have come up with a better answer. Yes, and this what used to be just dig deep and hit it hard, Bob and Woodward type journalism, as you'd see in the film All the President's Men, which does a pretty good job of depicting these two reporters as politically neutral. I mean, you don't get the sense that they dislike Nixon. Now, they did dislike Nixon, but that doesn't come through in the film. The dirty rat. What they wanted to do was get to the bottom of why were there a bunch of guys from Cuba who were arrested for breaking into the Watergate Hotel, where the Democrat Party was holding up its headquarters. It was weird. Like, of all the things to break into. Okay. So it wasn't partisan, right? It certainly is now. All right. Well, is this good or bad for us? Okay, let's see what you say. However, excessive distrust creates serious risks. Democracy depends on shared foundation of credible information. When major news institutions lose legitimacy, misinformation and partisan echo chambers fill the void. I witnessed this dynamic firsthand during my years in local government, where distrust of traditional media did not yield more informed constituents, but rather more confused and divided ones. Rumors spread faster than truth or corrections, and cynicism often substitutes for genuine civic engagement. And I would, and that's an excellent answer, by the way. And I would say that last one, Angelia, is of particular importance. That look, as an historian, which I am, I'm gonna tell you something if you haven't figured this out already. This country was never a place where everybody got along. And in fact, where the governance is concerned, it was designed on purpose, the governance, not to get along. We use the expression checks and balances in this sort of very euphemistic way. Well, everybody is watching everybody else, and then they're balancing each other out. Yeah, okay, that's one way to put it. Another way to put it, the way it was actually designed to function, is that the framers of our country and the designers of our government, their starting point was the government that governs least governs the best. And how do you keep governments from over governing the governed? Well, you design them in such a way that they tie themselves in a knot and argue all the time. And this puts a check on their power and balances out one branch against the other, because they're always fighting, both between the three major branches of government and within the branches of government. You know, you'll get courts on a local or state or federal district level that'll make a ruling, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court goes, nope, you know, completely throw that out. Okay, or you'll get states that pass laws, and then the federal government steps in and goes, nope. Or within the Congress, you know, within, say, the House of Representatives, they'll be fighting with each other and fighting it out in the media, and then likewise in the Senate. And this spills over into the media, and perhaps the most damaging, deleterious effect is that people go, forget it. I just don't want to even get involved. And they become cynical, saying, well, you know, it doesn't make any difference anyway. It's all corrupt. It's a conspiracy. Now, my op-ed time, I think that's significantly what is behind and what is wrong with the constant emphasis on the Epstein files. No, I'm not saying that if someone has engaged in pedophilia, that's okay. That is not what I'm saying. But the question is, what is there to be gained by the release of all of these files? And, you know, I've had this discussion with people. I say, well, we'll know who all the perpetrators are. No, we won't. I mean, unless Epstein kept a running tally with provable descriptions of which among his guests did what to whatever underage girl they'd convinced to get on the plane and go off to the island, which he didn't, then what you're going to get is just more, you know, mud for the masses to throw at each other, and accusations and innuendo and cynicism. And it's sort of a darned if we do and darned if we don't. If we don't release them, then this is the cynicism of, well, you know, that ring of power, that those folks that think they can get away with anything, there they are again. And then if we do release them, it's aha, so and so was mentioned in the Epstein files, and that becomes the boom, the stamp. They were mentioned in the Epstein files, and therefore guilty. I knew it all along. All of these folks are involved in this, and you know, they may have received a text or been mentioned by this criminal, Jeffrey Epstein. That doesn't mean they were down at the island. It's the cynicism. This is very dangerous. Dangerous to us as a country. Okay. Question number 3. Okay. Is Matthew A. Baum concerned about the increasing number of Americans who are informed by means of soft news? And soft news is sometimes called infotainment. Okay. Charlotte, let's see what you said. Is Matthew Baum worried about soft news? Not like Neil Postman, which is true, because I gave you that quote from Postman from the beginning of Amusing Ourselves to Death, right? And yes, Neil Postman was very concerned about soft news, and I think he was right. I find it peculiar, and if you step back from a minute, jarring that some of the oh boy, isn't that great, this dessert topping, or this new car, or this Carnival Cruise vacation, that this is the message that's tagged on to say what's going on with the war with Iran, or a fire that's raging in Southern California near Ventura. And it's like, what? You know, why are you telling me about a diet soda? I'm like, oh yeah, I would like a Diet Coke right now. And then I'm switching to some horrible immolation that's burning people's houses down. Very, very confusing. So Neil Postman was genuinely concerned and confused. Baum, not so much. Okay. Baum argues that soft news brings more people into politics, but changes how they're informed. Byproduct theory. Not worried about ignorance. Soft news reduces the knowledge gap. People who ignore news, hard news, pick up info accidentally from talk shows and late night comedies. And now see, when you read an author, you doesn't just because A, you've been asked to read it, and B, it's in print, you don't have to agree with it. And especially if you can point to good reason as to why you shouldn't. One shouldn't agree. And I disagree with Baum. I do not think that that is a beneficial trade-off. Well, it's sort of like saying, well, maybe there are things that, you're not good to read, but at least they're reading. No, no. Our mental landscape is shaped by the information that we take in. And the data on this is wide and deep, especially if we're taking information about things that we don't have a functional base of knowledge. For example, we have a lot of studies that show if someone has no idea about, let's say, a medical procedure, because there are a lot of medical shows, drama out there, okay, and they see a certain condition or a certain process, like, a diagnosis, performed in a certain way on the television show, the brain doesn't do a great job in distinguishing the fictional depiction from the actual execution. And I don't mean like I mean like how the thing is done. And consequently, people get a false idea about how, much and when and how of their condition can be fixed, rectified through medical processes. And then they're shocked. They're like, well, what do you mean you can't just like undo this? Because that was their frame. That was their perspective. So I disagree. I think Baum's got this right. Not worried about ignorance. Soft news reduces the knowledge gap. Worried about content. Soft news focuses on scandal, personality. Worried about content. And try to write in a more narrative way, Charlotte. Okay, you've got all the facts here. Stitch them together. Worried about content. Soft news focuses on scandal, personality, and drama over substance. This makes viewers more persuadable and more isolated. Strategic concerns because viewers can care more about personality. Politicians frame issues the way to win votes. This can shift foreign policy substance. His map to Postman's Huxley warning. Postman feared a future where information isn't suppressed but drowned in irrelevance and entertainment. And I believe we are in such a future now. Sea of irrelevance, love of distraction. People choose soft news for pleasure and get politics incidentally if they get them at all. And remember what I said last week. One of the dangers, the greatest threats to our democracy, is that any process that becomes habituated and leads to the development of habit that makes us suspect our fellow citizens' capacity to make informed and beneficial decisions for the rest of us. That undercuts democracy. Democracy, which comes from the Greek word demos, meaning the group, the crowd, does not work unless I and you and everybody else can look at everybody else. You can look at me and I can look at you and go, yeah, okay. That's a level-headed person. Yeah, okay. They can make a decision about themselves and me, because allowing them to vote on issues means I'm handing over to them the ability to make a decision for me. And when we reach a point of distrust in one another as citizens, that breaks down. Okay, question number 4. What is meant by media frames and frame adoption? All right, this if you're in journalism, you hear this. I mean, this should be like, boom. Okay, Kirsten, let's take you. Media frames are how journalists and news reporters position a story in the view of the public to influence a certain perspective. Arthur's Newman Just Klinger found 5 media frames were most common: us versus them, human impact, powerlessness, economic and morality. Soft news typically uses the human impact, morality, or injustice to frames to appeal to an audience personal emotional responses rather than interest in data or facts. Okay, good answer. So a couple of things about media frames that you need to remember. Okay. Not only is this the media's exercise in telling us how to look at something, it's also an exercise even before that in telling us what to look at, saying, well, this is important. And I, as someone that works in the news business and teaches it, I shouldn't be, but every single morning I am still just gobsmacked. That's a great phrase. It's like, punched in the jaw is your gob, it's old British word for mouth, gobsmacked over the information that is thrown up. That's an interesting way to put it. That's tossed up on the news boards. And I, my typical morning is I get up early. I try to get, just about the time the sun's coming up. I soak up about 20 minutes of early daylight. I have a cup of coffee, surprise, and then I go through the news quickly. And I'll go through a number of different news boards, news sources, including my local one. But, I look at Fox, I look at CNN, I look at MSNBC, I look at some British and European boards. I might look at some from France. And I'm still surprised at what passes as news. And this is the frame. No, I don't care how persuasively you try to write. Most of it's horrible writing, and how flashy the pictures are. Somebody who sizzles in a bikini and is blowing up the internet. That's not news. All right. I mean, that is what it is. It's soft porn, and that's not news. So it's not only the media telling you how to look at things, saying, well, this is what this means. It's also the media telling you that this is the thing that is meaningful. And that's perhaps where we get into the most trouble, because much of what they put up as meaningful is not. It's meaningless. It's not even news. It's just the moving of a chunk of information from here to in front of you over there. Okay. Remember those words. You'll see them again. Okay. Question next. Which one is this? 5. What is meant by voluntary political inequality? And man, do I not like this term. What are its origins, in your opinion? Is it a real phenomenon? If so, how is it impacting our democracy? Nikisha, let's take a look at you. Voluntary political inequality is the way individuals participate in politics. Some people vote and watch the news, keep up with what's going on politically or with our government. Others don't really participate for personal reasons. The origin of voluntary political inequality can come from monetary and educational limits, or even access to the news and internet. I do feel it's an actual phenomenon that negatively impacts our government. If more individuals took time to follow and participate in politics, I feel our presidential and government wouldn't be the mess that they're in today. Okay, well, I certainly agree that they're in a mess. Okay, no, and I think that's well answered. What I dislike about the term is the implication that this is inequality. Inequality as a word implies a unjust balance of something, power, distribution of resources, whatever. That's part of how democracy works. You don't have a democracy, and here's the rub. You do not have a democracy if you do not have the ability, the willingness to allow absolute, full tilt participation, or zero, like just lie on the couch and eat potato chips and do nothing. If you force people into participating, if you force them to vote, if you force them to support a candidate, now you're not into democracy. You're into a dictatorship of some sort, whether that's an oligarchy or And I'm not saying it's a good thing to allow people to lie around and do nothing, but that's inherent in a system that extends freedom and free will. Maybe, maybe the way it should go is if you don't participate and you don't take part in the political process, that you, after some, period of lack of participation, you lose your right to participate fully until you're reintegrated or something. But, that would come with its own problematic elements. So, okay. Question number 6, drawing on your readings from MAP, what does the term gatekeeper mean? Who is keeping the gate and how are they doing it? Do you agree or disagree with the given explosion of new media that the power of the gatekeeper is declining? Okay, Bob, let's take a look at what you said. The term gatekeeper refers to the function and control that media organizations perform on publishable and non-publishable news information. I'm not sure what you mean by publishable and non-publishable, because if it's like, I think you maybe mean print and non-print. Dunaway and Grabier recall that wire service reporters, web editors, reporters assigned to sort stories, and editors or publicists are gatekeepers. Okay, yeah, this is what it means. It means, who's in charge of seeing what gets out. Well, that's changed now with new media, in which everybody can be a reporter. Okay. The explosion of new media altered the power of the gatekeeper. However, the level of impact of new media is still inefficient in providing a significant decline in gatekeepers. I don't know that I would fully agree with you, Bob, but that's, you're entitled to your opinion. Now, what I ask that whenever you put an opinion forward, and I don't mean for this question per se, but just as your development as a thinker, what's your data? Okay. The audience in the majority still has good relationship with what some scholars describe as the unlovable press. Also, the media industry is a well-organized system with significant influence on new media. Again, I don't know that I'm going to agree with you. The very platform that I'm putting this video on, YouTube, is awash with views that significantly differ from large media organizations. And there's some gatekeeping here, because if you say certain words, if you include certain things in the title, they take the video down. But there are other platforms like Rumble that are open, or X, where you say whatever you want. So I think that this explosion of new media is significantly challenging the role of the gatekeeper. But that was a good answer. Question number 7, what does the term muckraking mean? What does it mean if a muckraker is a surrogate, mouthpiece, framer, or an agenda setter? Is muckraking good for democracy? Jennifer, let's take a look at you. You'll wrap us up here. We learned chapter 1 of Mass Media. President Theodore Roosevelt coined the term muckraking to call out corruption. Journalists known as muckrakers served a purpose in creating change in corporate America and the government by uncovering wrongdoing through investigative reporting. Muckraking supports democracy by maintaining checks and balances. Despite media sensationalism and resource constraints, investigative reporting is vital for exposing corruption information. The use of media surrogates is seen daily on major networks that carry water for issues that politicians or government leaders may or may not want to discuss. The usage of mouthpieces allow muckrakers to benefit from leaks by whistleblowers or advocates for change. Administrations despise leakers and actively seeks ways to stop the practice or punish them. The media will use agenda setting to frame the public, what the public should think about through the narrative they cover, and may not adopt frames in their entirety, and thus the audiences combine framing elements in unexpected ways and impact the support of policies. Okay. Good answer, but remember to answer the whole bit, like, is this good for us? So yeah, muckraking is, it's like moving a rake through the mud. You're just trying to dig up scandal. Okay. And one of the questions that this raises is, and this is I think an essential question, is because they go after, muckrakers go after sensational stories. Are the private lives of politicians relevant, important to their function as governing individuals? And you can answer this depending on how you look at it. On the one hand, you can say, well, no, so long as whatever they're doing is not being done in the stead of governing. All right. And then on the other hand, you can say, well, absolutely yes. Because the essence of being hired as one of the governing, so elected to an office, the essence of what's going on here is that we, the people, are hiring somebody to do a job for us and over us, in which they are unsupervised most of the time. So it's like having a business and you hire an employee. And you say, okay, I'm hiring you to be over me. I own the business. We own the country. We, the people. I own the business. All right. We own the country. So, but I'm going to hire someone to dictate policy to me about how I should run my business, take excess money from me, decide on what sort of, entanglements with other businesses I get dragged into. And you're going to do this all while I'm not supervising you. Which raises the question, is character and integrity and behavior that dictates, that goes on when nobody is watching, relevant to our expectations of what they might be doing when they're in their official capacity and nobody is watching? You can probably guess from the length of explanation that I gave to the two scenarios. I think I tend to side on the personal lives and conduct are important. I mean, in this respect, I agree with Socrates. The virtuous man is the same man in private as in public, and that's how I strive to do. And muckrakers go after mostly what individuals, be they politicians or not, do when nobody is watching their private lives. Okay. All right, Jennifer, good answer. Okay, everybody. I'm just gonna be with it, because a half an hour could be a long time to be in front of a video. All right, but so it goes. All right, so remember your next film review, and watch something you haven't watched. All right, don't watch something that you already know. Get out there. Okay, be a little gypsy, get around, as Paul McCartney would write. All right, and until next week, there was something I needed to tell you about next week. Let's see, where are we? We are in May. No, that's fine. It'll be the next week after that because I'm going to be gone, but I'll, everything will be posted, but the video will be a little bit later, but that's not for 2 weeks. I'll tell you later. Right. Until next week, I think about you, I pray for you, and I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.